Today's date is October 23rd, 2023. My name is Ruchi Tiwari. I'm an intern with the Houston Asian American Archive. And today I'm interviewing Miss Yvonne Chen about her life and that of her late father and artist Chen Zhongho. So to start, can you tell me your name and where and when you were born?
My name is Yvonne Chen, and I was born in Taiwan, Taipei, Taiwan. Yeah, and the year? Did you
Yes.
ask? Yes, I was born in 1965.
Thank you. What are some of the values that your parents emphasized in your upbringing?
Okay. Um, Actually, my parents, they are both artists. My mother was a music teacher at school and a piano teacher. My father was a businessman and a watercolor painter. They were very busy with their own career, and pretty much they let me grow up without uh, too much coaching and or limited me. I learned the value from how they conducted themselves in life, like bearing hardships, standing hard work, uh, perseverance, optimistic, and financial responding.
Thank you. What were you influenced by were you influenced by the arts through your father and mother?
Uh, yes, I think, although my father, he never taught me how to paint, but since he was too busy, he has no time. But mm, I saw him painting all the time, although I didn't especially paying the attention to it. But our my home is like our home is like his gallery. So I saw all his painting since I was very little, and yeah, I think I definitely have some gene of art from him. But I have never been trained by the professional artist or by him. And for myself, I didn't work very hard on it. You know, so my painting cannot compare with him at all. And from my mother, I think because she is a piano teacher and she good at singing. So I think my singing performing is from her.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I agree. I think just being in a space with art around you, I think maybe not in the ways that your parents expressed, but I think definitely in like other ways, maybe like through design and other things. I think your artistry definitely shows.
Yeah.
So my next question is what college did you attend and what year?
I attend the Chinese Culture University in Taiwan in 1985. Yeah, and then I after that my another education is in New York. That's the Fashion Institute of Technology. I major in fashion design in 1990.
Yeah, and the next question is just what you majored in, but also why did you decide to major in these specific things?
Yeah, because I think I'm I I like fashion, and okay, I say the one in New York first. I like fashion. I like to dress up myself in the latest trend. So that's why I major in that. And for the Chinese Culture University, I major in cinema and drama because I like performing arts, and singing is a performing arts. And I also, just like I said, I think I also have the gene from my mother. So that's why I major in these. And just like they are artists, I think I definitely have the influence from that.
Yes, I think it clearly shines through, definitely. So moving on to more of a focus on career and community involvement, can you briefly detail the jobs you did before your current role?
Sure. I work for numerous imported luxury goods company, including Bluebell Taiwan, Esprit Taiwan, Mercedes Taiwan, Tasa Meng Group for U.S. brand like Coach and duty-free merchandise. Um, Most of what I do is like retail management and fashion buying and merchandising. And I ever like fully in charge of a imported grain. Yeah. And then after 10 years of my father's passing, I began to start a new career as a curator. I held exhibition for my father's and other Taiwan painters of his generation. And a couple of years later, I began to sell artworks as a broker. The artwork is not my father's artwork. So in addition to painting, I also do all kinds of artworks like including contemporary, modern, and some antiques, both Eastern and Western.
Thank you for sharing. Um, so my next question is, I remember reading that you said that you didn't know too much about your father's art career. So what was the process of collecting research, such as what sources did you look at and or who or what people you contacted?
Um, after I uh, finished my father's funeral, I started to sort out his belongings. Um, that's nearly 1,000 pieces of artworks, which tells the up and downs and of his life. I um, I began to organize his painting by by category, by year, and I took photo measurements and give the serial number of each painting. Also, I visit the gallery that my father, the Nan Gallery in Taiwan, that my father has twice a solo exhibition, and also, uh, can you see me? Oh, okay. Also, I met with some professional curator and uh, historian in Taiwan, and to collect the information of my father, and also visit the museum and like the Ministry of Culture and the Department of Culture Affairs of Taipei, to collect all the information.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, the next question I have is, can you give a brief history of how the CZH Gallery, which also stands for the Zhong Gallery, came to be?
Okay. Actually, CZH Gallery is a virtual gallery. There's no physical space for it, um, because that involved too much. And some of like half of the painting of my father's painting is in Taiwan now, so it's kind of difficult to have a gallery. And actually, it just I think of to deal with my father's painting. It's better to have a organization, a nonprofit organization to do it. So that's how it become this way.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So what are your day-to-day tasks as the president of the gallery? And what are some challenges that you have come across?
Okay. The day-to-day task is first of all, it's since I focus on promoting my father's paintings. So the most important thing is get exposure. So uh, I will try to, but exhibition it costs a lot and time and energy and the fees. So I try to join some events to do events or festivals to get the exposure. So that's the day-to-day tasks that I have to search this events and festival. And also, I have to, in order to reach the goal, uh, mm, I have to, since this is a nonprofit organization, so not only promote my father's painting and promote Taiwan, also I have to give back to the society. Is another goal. So I will join to see there any charity event uh, or uh, like there's some new goals to set up like gather the information of like support artists or establish the art scholarship, something like that. Gather those information and also study because in this field you need to uh, gather a lot of knowledge. So study the further study on the relationship between like Taiwan and Japan, or the modern history of and the geography of Taiwan, that kind of things. Um, and and also I have to, since the exhibition costs a lot, so I have to see for the support for the government, both Taiwan and Houston. So that's I put on the efforts every day to search about this, and the challenge that I believe you mentioned that I come across that happened to me. I think the challenge is I don't have I don't think there's a serious challenge for me, but if I must say, I think selling my father painting is a challenge to me. How to say it? Because uh, the the what I really want to do is promote it instead of selling it, because I still have a lot of um, exhibition I want to do. If I sell it now, they would become uh, no painting, no enough painting to do the exhibition, because through the exhibition and uh, the exposure, that's how you can um, promote the paintings.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing. I didn't know there was so many diverse roles within the job, and it was really nice to hear all the things that you're doing and the different things that you're balancing. Thank you for sharing that. So my next question is, how do you engage the community to appreciate artwork, and what role do you see art playing within the community, which like also Houston?
Okay. Um, in addition to, I think in the exhibitions, I will do the every time. I will try my best to do the guided tour for the in the exhibition, or if there's no exhibition, there's online presentations, and I also support like suitable events in community by joining their events to selling the like postcard, reprints, and painting catalogs of Chen Zhong Ho. And through this way, they can see the artwork. So to let them appreciate the art. And to other art and culture activities, I always participate, or you know, or sometimes I help as a volunteer, because this art activity, it needs the support. Um, like volunteer, or you buy the tickets, that kind of thing. And the role that uh, that are playing in the community, I think uh, just like I said in the reception of my father's exhibition in 2022, is that art is no boundary. It will bring us together by understanding each other. So people with a different language and custom from all over the world and settle here, and learning each other's art that represents one's country and culture will help with the uh, uh, ethnic integration and reduce the conflict. And it also helps kids of the immigrants to identify themselves and learn their own culture, and also to activate people's creativity to move people. Uh, and also, art can be used in um, like medical, like mental disease. We have the art therapy to help with the mental disease. So I think uh, art can play a very important role in the community.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I think definitely I see the space and capacity of the gallery connecting between cultures and being very much a restorative space for a lot of people. My next question is from the many sceneries that your father has made, which one are you most drawn towards? And what is your favorite period of artwork from your father's collection?
Okay. Actually, I'm most drawn toward to the theme. It's the ocean view with the port, the dark, and the seashores, boats. That's my favorite scene. And you say, what period of artwork that I like the most? Actually, to be honest, I like them all, because every period has the different style. Because my father, he continued to experiment to break through the previous style. So if I have to say, it's there are two periods I like. One is those in the early 1970s. The that at the time that his sketching skill is precise, and the color is bright and crisp. It's a British Orthodox depiction, and the style is unprecedented. And so I like that. But another period of time is in the 1990s, because the in the 1990s his painting looked much more passionate in color, and his brushstrokes were stronger than ever. So some of his works look like oil painting. So that's one very unique point, that other watercolor painting that you cannot see at other watercolor paintings. So that means that his long hidden insight grows through the roots. So that's more like Fauvism. So these two period of time, his artwork in these two period of time is what I like the most.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think the next question I have is how has spreading your father's artwork with the world impacted you personally?
Um, uh, actually, I feel great and grateful, and I learn a lot from it. Um, First of all, I like to thank my father to let all this precious legacy to me, and so I can know more about him. And secondly, is um, the more I work on his artwork, the more I feel proud of him because he's not he never stopped painting, no matter what situation he happened to him, and because during the 1950s in Taiwan, this quite a difficult time in Taiwan. The political was harsh, and the living environment is very poor. And also the other time is like when he was very sad about my sister passed away. He still focused on painting nonstop, and so he insists on watercolor painting in his life. Also made me very proud of. It's mm, like because Taiwan, the watercolor in Taiwan's art market, the value is not that good. Not like the other country in the world. So even this, and a lot of painters in his generations already give up watercolor and change to oil painting, but he still insists on that. And also the effort that he enriched Taiwan fine art in the early days, while the art resource was scarce. Um, that's another thing I'm very proud of. And the last is um, his painting was the biggest contribution to Taiwan fine art because it record the changing landscape throughout Taiwan, and his artwork has multiple function, not only move people like any other painting did, but he has he can promote Taiwan, including tourism, uh, diplomacy, and culture and history understanding. So, and also I believe he was the first painter in Taiwan to see all the scenes in person and depicted them as a collection of 16 watercolor paintings and make it a postcard. And he's the first one at the time.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I agree. His determination and persistence is very admirable. Um, my next question is, how did the COVID-19 pandemic impact your interactions within the community in terms of the gallery? And if you had to change anything?
Okay, yeah, because I have no, this is a virtual gallery, so I have no physical gallery. But the thing is, um, when COVID-19 happened, I have an exhibition in Taiwan, Tainan, Taiwan. So turned out to be I have to um, quarantine for 15 days in Taiwan when I entered Taiwan, and my helper cannot go with me because he needs the qualified visa. So it turned out to be that I went back to Taiwan by myself and do all the exhibition by myself. And another one was I have a I supposed to have the exhibition of my father for the AAPI Heritage Month. It's supposed to be in 2021, but later because the pandemic, they shut down the Houston Public Library Central Library, so it was postponed to 2022.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of kind of curveballs were thrown. But I'm happy to see that you were able to adapt. So the next few questions are going to focus more on uh, certain organizations that you're a part of and your role within them. So the first one is, what value has the Chinese Culture University Alumni Association added to your professional career?
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I only joined the Alumni Association in Houston. I didn't interact with the CCU Alumni Association in other place. So um, actually, something happened here, but it's not a very good experience. But I learned a lesson good for me to better deal with the different kinds of people in the community. And long story short is um, to my understanding, the leader of the alumni association uh, supposed to serve um, the association. And if there's something she or he needs to make a decision, he's supposed to consult with other members to make a decision. It's not um, decide by he or himself, he or him or himself or herself. So it just I think every association has the bylaw. So I think for our alumni association needs the uh, to establish the bylaw as soon as possible. That you know that's a better for other things that we need to decide, or we have something to follow.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The next question is, what do you hope to give back by being a part of the um, Zhong Shan Girls High School Alumni Association? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Zhong Girls High School is the second best girls high school in Taiwan. As a president, as the vice president of this alumni association, first of all, it's because we do a lot of events of it, like birthday party, quarterly, one day tour once a year, um, the Moon Festival celebration, and that kind of and so what I want to give back is I think in the future I will work on the reinforcing the relationship with my alma mater and with other alumni in the USA. Like how students come to Houston to study by offering information of a university, some suggestion, and how's the living uh, environment, that kind of information to the students in our school, and help students to fit in the life here. And also the most important is set up the scholarships for them, and or inviting their renowned music and flag band to perform in Houston, or even in the States. Um, and another important thing is establish the sister schools in Houston. I think because our president is Zhu Qingqing, and she is the Southern News Group, the the president of the Southern News Group in Houston. So I believe under her leadership, we can achieve all these as a give back to our school.
Yeah, all those goals and stuff sound like incredible, like the internship program and the cross collaboration between Houston and Taiwan. So it's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. So my next question is, as a leader within your career and the community, what tools and qualities have helped you succeed?
What to help me to succeed? Okay, actually, I have to say, I'm not that a mature leader in in my community, and there's still a long way for me to be successful. And my face is I would do my best until the last minute when I decide to go for it, and also the consistency and hard working are the must in making successful. And also the you have to be fearless because if I fail, so what? You can always start it over. Yeah, I think that's my face to be uh, to be uh, to be successful in my career and community.
Yes, and I'm happy that you want to grow more as a leader, but I have to say you very much exemplify what a leader is. And my next question is, much of your work involves connecting or communicating with individuals and communities. What have you learned about building these relationships?
Okay. Actually, I have to say, to do things is much easier than to deal with people. So I would rather work all day instead of, you know, dealing with people for an hour. But there's a different aspect um, that I deal with this. For example, to general individual and the community, I would say giving instead of taking is my concept. Always that give a hand to people when they need a little bit help. I don't mean like sending gifts or that kind of thing. It's just help people when you can. If that not bother you a lot. Okay, and also I hope people when they think of me, they think of that they can always get something, either useful information or some little help from me. And to whom deserve respect in the community, to whom deserve respect, I will be polite and but not never flatter. And to who bully me, either neglect it or just fight back. Because you have to say no to anything could happen. That you have to learn how to say no to stop them. And so I have some general ideas in this field for the beginners, because but that probably not what I exactly do, because first of all, not beginner, and the second is uh, I represent my father's painting, focus on promoting it rather than selling it. And so that's the difference that for other salesperson or for other people in the similar field, they probably have no artist father, and also they probably promote the artwork is for, usually you promote the artwork is for selling it. So yeah, that's a kind of different. And so some advice that I want to give is in this field, you just have to, that I learned before, you just have to deepen your knowledge and build a network that you can develop relationships with collectors or other professionals or the enthusiasts in this field. And you have to learn to have a effective communication. Uh, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean the longer the better. You have to uh, mm, you have to have the ability to com, convey your communication to be the unique and value of the artwork. And observing people, that's a must by their like their words, their reaction, their tone, their expression, even understand the collector's background first. And like online presentation, because nowadays is a digital age. Um, a lot of things is through the online presentation. And but that's not for me. I do more personal, uh, like I only do like a website for my father. And storytelling, that's a must because the story that related to the artwork that will always attract the collector. So and of course you have to do you have to engage with the community and you have to maintain the customer relationships. But for this point, for me, I rather not to bother my customers. If they because I don't want them to always feel that I try to upsell something. If I have something, I mean, this is not my what I'm talking about now is not my father's painting. It's some other artworks. That if I have something, I will pass the information. But if they are interested, they will contact me. And but I'm happy to get together with them if they invited me, either for their leisure time or like for the related events or exhibition. And also like market research, like you have to keep yourself updated. And like and the most important, you have to have a patience and persistence because of building this kind of solid relationships and reputation, it takes time.
Thank you. Yeah, those are some very good tips. And the last question for this section is, what are some long-term and short-term goals that you hold for the future?
Okay, for the short-term goals, I think just because CZH Gallery just established last year. So the short-term goal is run the foundation smoothly in hopes to being mature. That's the short-term goals, and just do the things that I already done last year and this year, and keep on doing that. That's mine. And no, just to make it smoothly. And for the long-term goals, I think first of all, I like to enlarge the scale to promote Chen Zhong and his artwork, my father's and his artwork, uh, by several things in the plan. First of all, is to working on his biography and to in hopes that can publish a book or even adapt it to become a film script. So that's that's a long-term things. And a second is I would like to have a group exhibition of 3 artists first one is the King Ishikawa. That's the enlightener of Taiwan's Western paintings. And the second one is Lan Yingding, who is the student of the King Ishikawa. And the third one is my father, Chen Zhong, because the three of them are all watercolor painter depicting Taiwan's landscape in a similar style. So I would like to have them to have a group exhibition so that can tells the kind of a can tell the development of a Taiwan's one style of a Taiwan's watercolor painting, how it began and how this style is how it developed, and also like let the Houstonian to know that how Taiwan's fine art history and how and when the Western painting come to Taiwan, that kind of thing. And also, I wish to have a group exhibition in Taiwan of my father and those artists that he visited when he worked for Pentel Art Supplies, because he passed a lot of that's in probably since 1950s, 1960s, and 70s, that he passed a lot of imported, mainly from Japan, the information to those art teachers and artists throughout Taiwan from north to south, and also demonstrate the art supplies. That's the products of Pentel Art Supply Company, and these enrich the early enrich the fine art of Taiwan in the early years. And I believe this can gather all these. Probably cannot make it all because a lot of artists already passed away, and I don't know if I can contact their children, to get all this painting. But I think that's very meaningful to make this group exhibition for my father.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm very excited.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, and I forgot to say also, the long-term goal. There's another long-term goal is like represent other artists when the foundation is stable and is smoothly run, being mature. I would like to represent other artists and also establish an art scholarship, maybe under my father's name. Yeah, I think that's kind of a give back to the society. Yeah, so that's long term.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm very excited to see what the future of the gallery holds and all of these new horizons you have to explore. And the next section is just going to be a little bit of sharing your perspective on the different communities here in Houston. So what are your hopes for Asian American and Chinese and Taiwanese American communities in the U.S.?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Oh yeah, of course. What are your hopes for Asian American and Chinese and Taiwanese American communities in the U.S.?
Okay. My hope is let me okay. Actually, I think the equality and inclusion is very important. Continue to be treated with equality and respect for the I mean, for the Taiwanese community. Actually, in these 1 or 2 years, Taiwanese American community get more attention now in the U.S. Because the two important reason is the chips of TMSC. I don't know if you know about that, and the U.S.-China conflict. So that makes Taiwan get the Taiwanese community get more attention, and also the educational opportunities uh, and the diversity and for the educational opportunities. Fortunately, there's a bill before of the some guarantee quota for the minority when applying schools. Fortunately, right now the bill is no longer existed. And the other thing is like diversity and representation that increase representation of Taiwanese Americans in various fields like politics, media, and art. I think it's a must. I hope just don't only focus on the medical and the computer science field. And the last is the community building. Uh, I think the vibrant and the supportive communities that foster networking, cultural exchange, and mutual assistance among the Asian American, Chinese American, or the Taiwanese American individuals and family. That's very important.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that. And the last question for this section is, what are you the most proud of throughout your life?
What can you say that again?
Yes, of course. What are you the most proud of throughout your life?
Oh, my first proud, yeah. Okay, throughout my life, I think it's the when I have the exhibition last year for my father, to celebrate the AAPI Heritage Month. That's my most my proudest moment when I give the make a speech at the reception. I think that's I feel very proud of that. And also when the painting donation in 2021 for the 60th anniversary of the Houston Taipei Society, Houston Taipei Sister City relationship. Uh, yeah, I feel very proud of that. And that's the most that's the proudest moment in my life.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it was great hearing about your professional and community engagements, and also about your plans for the future. So, shifting gears now, we're going to talk about the life of Chen Zongho. So to begin, where and when was your father, Mr. Chen Zongho, born?
He was born in 1928 in Pingtung, Taiwan. That's the southernmost county of Taiwan.
And growing up, what was a significant aspect or event that shaped the culture and time, such as a historical or cultural event, popular movies, television show, or other media?
Yeah, actually, my father was born in an era that Taiwan is in a turbulent situation, and the living environment was poor. Um, well, during his early life, Taiwan is under the Japanese occupation. Japanese occupied Taiwan is from 1895 to 1945. So he was born during this period of time. So like when he was born, I believe he think he is a Japanese. Because in 1930, Japanese began the assimilation policy. They offer you benefit that if you change your Taiwanese name to Japanese name, something like that. And so it's like they you know that's how it is. And at the time, and my father also been through the World War II, because that's at 1945, the the American bomb Japanese. That's one place is in Taiwan. So he been through all this, and then he also been through the uh, the changing of the era, because then Japanese lost the battle and they surrender, and then KMT from China take over the regime. So yeah, so all of this, it just his growing up experience. And when he was like, I believe 18 years old, he went to Taipei, ready to get into the university. And what happened to Taiwan at the time is a 228 incident. And then in 1949, when he was still a student in in the university, that another incident, that's a 4/6 incident, happened. So a lot of that's a student movement. So a lot of his he saw his classmates and teacher was uh, they get arrested, and even one teacher that he knows was that's in fine art department, and was executed in 1952. So all these just his like his life like when he still was a student.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like a very turbulent time, and a lot of questions about his identity. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. My next question is, how would you describe the household he grew up in, including the individuals he lived with?
Okay. My he has a big family, and usually at the time, in Taiwan, most of the family is a big family. And my grandpa was a medical doctor, and my grandmom, and he ran the clinic. And my grandmom was a housewife, and my father has one elder brother who was a medical student in Taipei at the time. Taipei is a northern part of Taiwan, and he also have an elder sister. The elder sister married to a pastor at a young age, because at that time girls get married early, like 18, 20. And and he also have a 7 younger siblings, so it's really a big family. Yes, that's the household he grew up and lived with.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And were there influences in the arts within the family that inspired your father?
I don't think so. And but when he was study at the middle school, one of his classmates know he likes to paint, and his classmates' sister's home collect a lot of the famous painter Landing that I mentioned prior, and so just took him to see the paintings, and he saw the painting and just fall in love with. So he often that went to his classmates' sister home to look at the painting and draw from the painting. I think that's the influence from that.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear. And shifting to his college career, who was someone Mr. Chen looked up to or inspired him growing up and he saw as his mentor?
Okay, I think probably should say his teacher, but it's an oil painting teacher, Mr. Liao, and that's when Chen Zhonghe was under great pressure about his future, because at the time it's like 1945, 1946, the era change. I mean, the World War II, you know, ended, and so everything Taiwan is, you can say, a mess. So he at the time, and my um because he is the eldest in his family. So should he go to work to help the family because I had 7 younger siblings, or should he keep on study? That's anyway. He went to Taipei and happened to meet this Mr. Liao uh, uh, on the street, and Mr. Liao is in the middle of painting something, uh, do the outdoor painting. And at the time, he didn't know him, and he stayed there and watched for a long time and decided to be a painter. And then when he entered the school and see Mr. Liao, it's happened to be his oil painting teacher. And mm, like Chen Zhongho's was good at um, the he's he's good at the composition of painting the orderly in chaos, like traditional full market, seaport, and the dock. This kind of skill is learned from Mr. Liao, and also he's a lot of Mr. Liao. He likes to read the books he liked to read. The the um the fondness of for the literature, or movie, or like books, like painting, like artists, was were all greatly influenced by Mr. Liao.
Yes, thank you for that. So the next question is, what higher education did he pursue? And if so, where and when? And what did he specialize in and why?
Okay, the highest education uh, was the National Taiwan Normal University in Taipei, Taiwan. He was there. He studied there from 1947 to 1950. And what he majored is in fine art department, because he had the passion for painting since he was a child. Yeah, so that's why. And also, just like I said just now, he in the beginning he doesn't, although he likes painting, but he doesn't know what his future gonna be, and it happened to become this way. Yeah.
Thank you. And then what did his family feel about his decision to pursue art?
Um, the school that the National Taiwan Normal University, that he passed the entrance exam, that's the school, for students to become teachers. That after graduate, you have to become teacher of high school. So at that time, you guarantee to have a job. It's a very good thing at that time. So after he graduated, he will immediately have the job. So the family didn't have have some opinion about that. And also this school because you have to be a teacher after graduate. So it seems, but I'm not quite sure. It seems that it's a tuition free for this school. So when at that time, because my father's family have some financial issue, so he's supposed to help the family, but since this since what I said just now, so the family doesn't uh, feel bad of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy that he had the support of the family and that he was able to then go on and support the family through his art. My next question is being in the first graduating class and first generation watercolor painters post World War II, was there a feeling of uncertainty about what a future in the arts might look like for Mr. Chen?
Yeah, of course. I think for them, for that generation, not only there is uncertainty about the future of art, but also uncertainty about the future of life. Um, like I said, he lived in a turbulent era, and he had better just follow the rule and do whatever you should. Um, just shut your mouth to keep away from trouble. That's the time. Um, Being a high school art teacher actually was not his life goal, but at least he had a guaranteed job waiting for him, um, and doesn't need to worry about the living. Um, because during and also during that time, it's not easy to have an exhibition. Um, so painting has no buyer, and the pen were very expensive because at the time the watercolor pen for the professional user, it's all imported, and it's very expensive. So for the young people with a little income and dream of being a painter, must have a strong will and passion for painting. Um, yeah, I can, I think, yeah, that's that's being a first generation of watercolor painter post World War II at the time. It's like this way.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And shortly shifting to marriage and family, when and how did he meet his wife?
I'm not quite sure the time, but how they met. But they met at the school they teach, they taught. Because my father is an art teacher, my mother is a music teacher. That's how they met with each other, and they got married. That's in Taipei, and they got married in 1958.
Yeah, that's so cute. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then going towards his career and community involvement, why was Mr. Chen drawn towards the medium of watercolor painting? Um, and did he experiment with other mediums?
Um, he um, just like I said, when he was uh, 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 a high school student, middle school student, he saw Landing's paintings at his classmate sister's home, and Landing's style is what is a water. He is a watercolor painter, And Lang Ling, actually, he's a world famous Taiwan watercolor painter who was included in a list of the greatest artists in modern time in the International Geneva Yearbook in 1962. So, and what he is a watercolor painter. And later on, like my father learned from Ishikawa King Ichiro style, and that's at the time he saw Ishikawa King Ichiro's painting is from a cover of a magazine at a used book because at the time, 1945, the World War II ended and the Japanese uh, went back to Japan and left a lot of books in Taiwan. And that magazine is used to be that you students apply university. That's the must read. And but later on, it's what he saw in the used book stand. And when he saw those painting pictures on the cover of the magazine, he loved it. And Ishikawa Keiichiro also was a watercolor painter. And of course, yeah, he did some oil painting, but his main media is watercolor painting. That's why my father, since my uh, my father liked their artworks, that's why he just followed the watercolor painting. And did he experiment other medium? Yeah, he did. He did some oil painting, but not many. And he add the different mediums in the watercolor painting. That's like he add the like fine signing pen, black pen, and pencil, charcoal, pastel, Chinese black ink in his watercolor painting to make a difference from those only painted with watercolor to add the creativity to the watercolor paint.
Yeah, thank you for sharing about that. My next question is, what did he like best about making art, and what was his art trying to communicate?
I think making art makes him feel very happy. He can fully indulge himself in creations, in making arts. It's like, going to another world. That's what I thought because he never told me, but from some document he told the gallery. Uh, I learned this from that, and and also he likes playing color with water. Uh, it's do the experiments because a little bit more or less of the water will make a big change of the color. And he loved sightseeing. He loved the breathtaking scenery of Taiwan, and he feels satisfied that if he can capture these in his painting. Of course, camera can capture too, but with camera that you cannot change it. With camera, it just exactly the same. But for painting, you can change it, like whatever you like, change it a little bit of the scenery. So I think to show how beautiful the land he grew up, how the landscape changed over the years, the living environment of these hardworking people on the land on this land, that's make him very happy.
Yeah, thank you for that. The next question is, and you kind of touched on this, the subject matter of landscape seems to be very prevalent in his artwork. Why was he drawn towards this subject?
Uh, I think he was deeply moved by the scenery of Taiwan when he first saw it on the, just like I mentioned, on the cover of that Japanese magazine. And not only because the picture is very beautiful, but also the scenery is very beautiful. Because he was born in the southern Taiwan, at the southernmost, And at that time, of course, the traffic, the it's difficult for him to go everywhere to see the scenery of Taiwan, and so he was uh, uh, like saw the breathtaking landscape and love it so much. That's why he also admire like Ishikawa Kenichiro and the Laindi. Their painting style it's about the Taiwan scenery, so that's why.
Yeah, thank you about that. And I bet the scenery from the paintings I've seen, they are truly breathtaking. Next, I would like to ask, how did he like to make his art, such as in his studio, or did he like to listen to specific music? Do he like to make artwork alone or with others, or any insight you can provide?
Okay. Um, just due to his work, he needed to travel a lot around Taiwan. So he always brought his painting tour with him. When he has a time, he was and he see the when he saw the amazing scenery, he will just stop there and do the outdoor painting. And but sometimes the time is not allowed. He would just take photo and or do a quick sketch with the photo and go back home, which is his studio, uh, and then do it at home. And and he will like that's what I saw. He would like make a cup of coffee and play all kinds of music that when he paint, that including like classic pop or movie music or hymn and in Japanese, English, Taiwanese, or Chinese. And actually, he loved the movie Godfather. He watched that like 30 times from the first to the third. And he loved the music and also like Only You, that old song, and I Can't Stop Loving You, that kind of song. And I often heard him humming when he painting. Yeah. And also the funny thing is we had a Siamese cat and he often just sitting on his painting desk and be with him, and he likes that.
Yeah, that's very cute. Thank you for sharing that. The next question is, what was his favorite site to paint? Is there a scene that he continued to revisit in his works?
Oh yeah, uh, he favorite side. I think the thing that in the earlier years is the things that surroundings his home, the surroundings of his home, and people's daily lives, like farmlands, village, and marketplace. And later on, he likes to paint the um, like ocean view and more like boats, uh, big ships, small ships, and that kind of thing. And there's one place that I found that there's several similar painting of that place in his collection. That's the name that neighborhood of the nice Watergate painting studio. Um, that's the studio that he went to learn sketching after he graduated from the university. And at the time, because it's a difficult time of Taiwan, lacking of everything, um, so not to mention the art resources. So um, so so the but so the those professional painter they the Taiwan made watercolor pen was poor, so they have to buy the imported, but which is very expensive. And he was at the time he lived in Taipei, away from his hometown. So he has to pay rent. He has to pay to learn, keep on learning the sketching, and he has to um, support a little bit, help to support a little bit about for his younger siblings. So and has to buy the expensive imported pens. So he really has to be frugal of his daily expense. And so under that kind of uh, uh, a situation, and also at the time, um, the Taiwan's society is under the the like political is harsh, that kind of situation. Just like I mentioned, that a lot of accident happen. So the whole society is kind of under a nervous situation. So so at that studio that he often um, play guitar and sing with his teacher to release pressure and chit chat with chatted the things that they couldn't share in public, like political things. So and 30 years after, he was a mature watercolor painter and a businessman. So he keep on, but he couldn't forget the the bittersweet memories of those days in the nice Watergate painting studio, because when they pen, they got very excited when they make a painting that is what exactly he wants. They got very happy. That kind of feeling. So he keep on going back to that place and pen that scene. That's um, that scene that's with several paintings that I found in his collection.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That is a lovely story. Um, so how did the postcard series come into being? And this particular series has been likened to the Formosa Evergreen Scroll in depicting the landscapes of Taiwan. What are some similarities and differences in these works?
Um, the postcard series. Um, okay. So because he worked for the Pentel uh, uh, art supplies company, needed him to regular travel around Taiwan. So he got a chance to see different sceneries, uh, to to um, for him to paint. And actually, at the time, it's not a lot of people can do that. But he has the luck, work for the company, so he can do that. And therefore, um, I believe he was the first painter of his generation to do to see these historical sites and city spot in person and depicted them as a collection of 16 watercolor paintings. Uh, so this collection was printed as a postcard by Yongle company. That's a famous local food products company to promote Taiwan's local food products and tourism. And I think it should be the first painting postcard set in Taiwan. I don't know how exactly Yongle Company and my father, how they cooperate for making this postcard set. Either the Yongle Company is one of my father's painting collector, or they thought the postcard set was a good way to promote their company's name because they print that on the postcard. So that's the way to promote the company. And they found my father, who was the only one painted all these scenic spots in 16 counties in Taiwan at the time. Yeah. And for the compare with the Formosa Ever Scroll in depicting the landscape of Taiwan, actually was first the first one who made this is Beatrice Shan. She worked for the Houston Fine Art Museum. She's a assistant curator of Asian art department. And so the Formosa Evergreen Scroll, let's talk about the similarity and difference. The Formosa Evergreen Scroll is a 200-foot Chinese black ink painting depicting Taiwan's from south to north tip. And it was why this painting come from. It was a moment of defining Taiwan on a grand scale after the UN revoked their recognition of the country in the 1970s. Government assigned two very famous Chinese black ink painter, Zhang Daqian and Huang Junbi, to work on this 1980 commission, attempt to use it to represent Taiwan. Okay, and so let's talk about the let's talk about the similarity and the difference. The similarity of the Formosa Evergreen Scroll and the Chen Zhongho's Chen Zhongho's postcard set. The similarity is both of them can represent Taiwan, and then they defining Taiwan's identity during the difficult time of Taiwan. The country faced the diplomatic difficulty internationally, and both painting show the harmonious growing of Taiwan. And yeah, it's difficult to, without painting to describe this, but I'll try my best. And the differences is the Chen Zhongho's podcast set is a Western watercolor painting, and it's for tourism. And Chen Zhongho went up to the mountains, down to the seashores and outlying islands by himself to make all this painting, and with his own passion only. And it was the postcard set was by private party to make it, and the postcard set is the painting is like a circuit around Taiwan's of Taiwan's 16 counties. This depicting Taiwan is like a circuit, and present like ecosystem balance of the sites of historical, political, religious importance. And Chen Zhongho painted it from 1972 to 1979, and it depicted an enlivened Taiwan. Chen Zhongho captured the essence of Taiwan in the 20th century is a site of great growth. And for most evergreen squirrel, it's a Chinese flag in painting. Its main purpose is for political. And the artists, a group of artists toured Taiwan and using planes to capture the aerial footage. And with the government's fully support, it's by official, and it's from the south to the north to depict Taiwan. And it presents a monumental view of the island nation. And it's from July 1981. They completed in half a year, and it's integrating urban and the country, shows Taiwan as a monumental masterpiece of urban design and natural resources. That's the difference.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's great to see the initiative that Mr. Chen took when he created the postcard series. And definitely the more of the local perspective that he brought. My next question is, what, if anything, did he believe needed to change about the arts education in Taiwan?
I believe he did. Although he never told me about this. And actually, watercolor, this fine art was neglected for quite a long time in Taiwan. Many, just like I said, many watercolor painters of his generation, I mean, professional watercolor painters, they changed their, to oil painting. Because I think oil painting is the trend worldwide, but watercolor is still an important fine art in most of the country. But in Taiwan, even at the school, the fine art department, they have a few class of it. So actually, control water is difficult and can hardly redo it if you made some mistakes. So I think my father would be so sad, and if he knew only few watercolor classes left in the fine art department of a university, and if he is still alive, he would definitely do something about it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The next question is, how did he feel to have his work in exhibitions? And what were his favorite parts of those experiences?
I believe that he felt excited and proud to have his work exhibited, and because it's his talent that God gave him, right? And what's also his treasure of his lifetime story in this painting. He worked really hard to make his skill like excellent. Since he only have a solo 3 times solo exhibition at the in private gallery while he was still alive. So I think because in gallery that's for collectors to purchase. So I think when the exhibition is very successful, that means a lot of people buy his paintings. For his paintings, he will be very happy because that's an affirmation of his artwork, of his efforts on, on the painting, and since at that time he can always paint another one. So he will be very happy for people, to purchase, to collect his painting. And also the praise the criticism and advice from the professionals or collectors or media uh, that gave him, that's very precious because through the exhibition, you will have these opinion about uh, the artwork you made. And although I'm not sure if he used those opinion in his artwork, but I believe he's very happy to hear some different voice.
Yeah, yeah. I bet he really was. So my last question for this section is, what did Mr. Chen hope for the legacy of his works?
I think he didn't tell me, but I believe he would like what I do right now for his legacy, and use his painting to show the beauty of Taiwan and the landscape change and the economic growth, the history, and all in his paintings, and let the public know about his efforts on enriching Taiwan's fine art when he was when the time was lack of resource. I think he will be very happy about what I'm doing now. And also use his artwork to help the society if there's a chance, and give back something to the society.
Yes, and I'm definitely sure he would be very proud of what you have been able to do with his work, for sure. So the next question is about kind of immigration and time that Mr. Chen spent in the US. So when did Mr. Chen come to the US, and how and why did it happen?
The first time he came to the U.S. is in 1984. That's because he our family applied green card. Green card, right? Green card. That's through my aunts because my aunts they already the permanent resident in the states.
What was his first impression of the US? Were there any cultural shocks he experienced?
I think he ever told me that because they at the time he went with my mom. Uh, I didn't go with them. So I remember he told me that he think United States because they went to LA, and he think everything is huge, and most of the place were clean, and lots of Chinese. And the culture shock, I think nothing serious. Um, just like he told me when you cross the street, if there's no traffic light, cars would waiting for you. It's not like in Taiwan, you have to wait for cars. Yeah, something like that. And there's no way for you to go anywhere by walking, that kind of thing. Because in Taiwan, we always walk on the street, and but in United States, that's kind of impossible. Even in Houston, the same thing.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely that is for sure. And how did he find his way to Houston?
That's because of me. Um, because I came here, and so usually before they only visit the West Coast, and because I settled down in Houston, and so he came to Houston to stay with me.
Thank you for that. And what about America appealed to him, and how did this make his paintings different?
Okay. In 1984, the first time he came to the state, he already um, uh, got some influence from the American art and culture because it can you can tell from his painting. There's one painting in 1984, the style was totally different. And in 1990, and during 1984 to 1990, he came visit a couple of times, but didn't stay long. But in 1990, he stayed in Los Angeles and San Jose for months and to paint. His style was greatly influenced by this joyful tree in the United States. His color was much more passionate and colorful, and his brush strokes was stronger than ever. So some of his painting just looked like oil painting. Um, and yeah, and in 2000, we visited Hawaii and came to Houston. He came to Houston to stay with me and planned to stay long-term stay. And of course, because I took him to the museum and he painted in the art studio, so definitely influenced by this, in Hawaii and Houston. And he likes Hawaii a lot because, you can walk on the street, just like in Taiwan, to get somewhere. And also he can speak Japanese in Hawaii, you can communicate. And anyway, so the American art and culture make his style from impressionism to Fauvism. That's much a great influence on this. And yeah, that's how the America appealing to him, and how his painting influenced by this.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. And the last question for this section is, what differences did he find in the American and Taiwanese art communities?
This, I don't think there's a big difference to him, because he was never really into the American art communities. So I can find the differences.
No, that's fine. And before I close out the interview, is there anything else you would like to share about your father's journey as an artist that we didn't touch on?
The journey as an artist.
Anything
Is that
else you can share? Yeah.
um yeah, I think he painted for like over 60 years. I think he never regret. In his diary, I saw, because it's in Japanese. It took me some time to understand what he wrote in the diary, and yeah, he never regret that being an artist, and he's very happy that um, he's lucky to have the job at Pentel. Because if he keep on being a teacher at school, and since he already have a family, and he will be no chance to see all the sceneries. And he also, when he was very sad about, you know uh, when he was like hopeless, he also wrote something in his diary. He said that I often think about life and death, and what does it left for me? Uh, Only paintings, you know. And he said I want to paint until go to heaven to see the God. I will never give up painting. Yeah, something like that. So he's really into it, and because of a painting that he never gave up painting. although there's a difficult time like living environment or the era that under a lot of pressure, um, or or like you can say that's a pain, and he never give up. Like he has a strong will and passionate of that. And also when he was very down, and he indulged himself in it as kind of a painting saving, to to work out from the sorrow, and also the painting, when the turbulence period of Taiwan, also because indulging in painting, so he forgot all the pressures, uh, you know, in his life.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I I'm so happy to hear that art was able to provide him such peace in life, and that he was able to, through his art, provide so much more to society. And if you don't have any questions, this is the end of the interview, and I would just like to say thank you so much
Thank
uh,
you so much.
for sharing all these stories and memories. And I hope you have a good day. Thank
You
you.
too.